American men are culturally and politically irrelevant in the United States. This video is about the main two reasons why.
We know more than ever before, but who knew bias was the bane of all you study? We know more than ever before, but who knew bias was the bane of all you study?
I've seen a lot of YouTube content creators suggest grand conspiracies about secret cabals of liberal Hollywood type socially engineering American culture for nefarious purposes. For those people, I introduce Occam's razor. It's not that complicated. American consumer culture has centered around the female consumer since the late 50s. It became youth-driven in the 80s and has been culture-driven since the turn of the millennium. Your culture war is about one thing: profit. Businesses go where the money is. I hold the conviction that every international business's holy grail is to make a country's government its consumer. I mean, after all, there's always going to be tax revenue. That's where the money is. But second to that though, you have to target consumers who are willing to spend where they're at. American business has known for decades that when men do spend their money, they tend to purchase few high-ticket items at long intervals. That's across all tax brackets. For a certain kind of earner, that might mean a yacht. A few levels down on the food chain, that could mean a motorcycle. Drop down some more tax brackets, and that might mean a video game console. But whoever you are as an American man, as far as consumerism is concerned, you are too content for too long a time between big purchases. The consumer economy that was built on the middle class does not work that way. You only have to think for a few moments about how our entire calendar is built around cultural consumer events. And if that event isn't inherently commercial, corporations transform it into such an endeavor. Now, this video is not a complaint about capitalism. American men of all stripes have overwhelmingly decided that some form of capitalism is the prevailing economic system on the planet, or should be. The thing about it is, the fact that the average American man's participation in our economic system has been identified as undesirable is the biggest reason that American men are culturally irrelevant. It's not that men don't spend money, it's just the way that men do it does not warrant their consideration when businesses target the American consumer. As you can see here, men only account for 15% of all consumer purchases made in the United States. So if you have ever wondered why the typical American television commercial portrays husbands and fathers like this, while mothers and wives constantly make faces like this, now you know. Most Americans think that they are not represented in Washington, D.C. I'm one of those people. But I've also noticed that the answer to the question, who is represented in D.C., is different depending on which American you're talking to. For me, the overrepresented faction in Washington, D.C. by our national leaders are wealthy Americans. Anyway, no matter what demographics they may fall under, American men of all stripes are outvoted by their counterparts. Logically, that can only mean one thing: that just like in the realm of consumerism that I just described, the American male voter is generally seen as politically irrelevant. It would make sense that the two are related, right? I mean, if men are only 15% of the household purchases, why should any for-profit business cater to that faction? The attitude is as old as our highest laws. It's commonly known that, originally, the American vote lied only with the white landowner. Money equals power, and power includes the vote. So just like the commercials that remind us how consumer business sees men, if you've ever wondered about the shocking legal woes of men in this country having to do with everything from lopsided child custody rates, child support, paternity fraud, stop wondering. The American man has become a resource that the most powerful forces in our society just plain doesn't have to cater to. At least until recently, because this is more of an honorable mention than a reason, but it does bear mentioning. I just said that American men are a resource, but there's a disturbingly high number of men who have decided not to be that resource. Look, I choose not to get much deeper into this issue than the surface because the fact of the matter is, further discussion of the American man's irrelevance in his own culture has been branded the speech of the politically incorrect, at best. And I have a day job and I don't want to take that risk. Suffice it to say, I can only imagine that there has always been and always will be a percentage of men in a given society that are disenfranchised. And that state can either be self-inflicted or not, or a little of both. The United States problem, in my opinion, is that there are too many men who are disenfranchised. How many is too many? I don't know. But when Russia invaded Ukraine, I saw a handful of videos here on YouTube that discussed a certain aspect of the conflict. In the comment sections of these videos, I saw comments like this and this. Now, I don't care who you are, or what you do, or what you believe. Anyone that's not alarmed by this sentiment is dangerously short-sighted. So here's my take. I'm not about to advise young American men to join in the consumerism in some effort to become culturally relevant. In fact, I advise the opposite. I suggest that men withdraw from consumerism even more than they already have. And for the average African American man that partakes in consumerist culture to a fault, I've already made videos encouraging that demographic to pull their head out of their butt. I will continue to give the advice to never buy anything that doesn't make you money. And for the few instances where that doesn't apply, make sure that your purchase at least saves you money over time. And no, by saving money, I don't mean get it on sale. I mean that by purchasing your service or object, it lessens liability over time to make the purchase worth it. For example, take the electric cars on our highways that have become so popular. Do the math. If you can justify the higher initial sticker price and price of ownership of an electric car over a gasoline-powered vehicle using math, then go ahead and get yourself an electric vehicle the next time you're in the market for an automobile. And speaking of electric cars, do you think that all the people who are currently driving electric cars did that math? Or did they just get that vehicle as a status symbol to keep up with the Joneses? Anyway, if you want an actual concrete example where I put my money where my mouth is, here it goes. About 15 years ago, my wife and I put commercial Christmas on the chopping block. That's right, except for the increased electricity bill for the lights around a beautiful white artificial tree that we've had for 20 years, I don't spend one consumer dollar between Halloween and New Year's Day. 15 years of no Christmas, and instead investing that money. That's just one change. It's April 2022, the Christmas shopping season starts in 6 months, even earlier if you're obsessed with it. I'm curious to see what kind of commercials will be produced by companies after a decade of men not participating. Finally, when it comes to voting, again, I can't say much here. Suffice it to say, the United States needs men back at the polls. I have a suspicion that when American men start exercising their franchise again, things that are now taken for granted will be shaken up in a way that will change the course of our culture for a long time. And that's it. I'm Odium. This has been Message in a Bottle.